and that's what I mean when I say the goalposts have been moved. These guys don't get any pushback from the public when they just decide I'm going to use different language, and that changes it and makes it legal. Is Trump in any kind of exposure here from making this move? Hey, everybody, welcome back to Reason Rises. And as always, we're excited to have our friend Ewen Allison join us again. Ewen Allison, Esquire, I want to say. My friend who is technically has been on the Beltway, currently in Maine, and his main focus for enjoyment and study purposes has been international war crimes. Not in that field anymore, but has lots of insights and wisdom to give us. And we thought, why don't we have Ewan back and talk about what's going on in Iran? So we'll dive right into it. Tell me what you thought when you first heard that any of this had started. Where did you find out? Just give me a timeline.
Well, first, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Mm-hmm.
I first heard of the news when I came down for breakfast, and my brother had on MSNBC, and they announced that the U.S. had attacked Iran. And at first, I know I should have been shocked. No one likes it when our country is taken to war. On the other hand, I realized that with uh, all the ships that were heading there, all the planes that were being readied, that it was commensurate with an attack of some sort. Um, and I was just generally annoyed with President Trump. I mean, this is obviously a war of choice. Uh, Iran is ultimately a strategic threat to our interests in the region, but in terms of a threat, an imminent threat to destruction of those interests, it's not there.
Okay,
So,
but so my first question immediately after what you just said, are we at war? Because I don't know if you, well, I think you did see my video from earlier, right?
yeah.
So my contention is, and I'm, it's hard to say that I'm on Trump's side about anything, and that's sad, and that's not okay. When he does something right, I should acknowledge it, but uh, I think with the AUMF and with Iran being a confirmed state sponsor of terror, and on top of that, the fact that he hasn't declared war technically, obviously only Congress can actually do that. So, are we looking at war, or are we looking at, just like Putin did in Ukraine, a special military operation that doesn't require any kind of congressional approval, doesn't require going to the UN? Again, we've got the AUMF, but we've also got just the fact that he hasn't actually declared war. This is kind of a special military operation. He clearly went for regime change in the way of killing the Ayatollah, but let's not forget that he's a pseudo head of state. They have a president. He's a spiritual leader, technically, who had all the influence of a president. But now they have apparently appointed a council over there. So we killed several of their top leaders, including their Secretary of Defense and lots of others. But
Spy chiefs, yeah.
yeah, exactly. But they've put together what they're calling a council who's going to essentially, take over the country now, according to them. Now, who knows where that's going to go with us still dropping bombs and firing missiles? But again, are we at war, or is this just a special military operation?
That's really the wrong question to ask. I mean, war. if you want to get strictly speaking, if you want to speak strictly, war is a legal condition between two countries.
Mhm.
Um, in previous eras, it only existed when both countries had declared war on each other. The problem there is one country might or might not declare war, but you've got what looks like a war, and you've got all the human suffering that happens with a war. You're going to have all the political consequences that happen with a war. So the Geneva Conventions of 1949, there are four of them, they refer to armed conflict. And that's a very broad thing. It can happen even when you just have your own troops crossing a border and shooting up stuff or sabotaging stuff or assassinating somebody. That's still as far as the International Committee of the Red Cross is concerned, it's still armed conflict. Okay. Now we are having an armed conflict. Our military forces are going after Iranian things. Iranian military forces are going after American military things and also attacking other countries, using their military to attack civilian targets. But just Iran is still using its military. So the test is whether you have a military using kinetic force.
Mhm.
Then you have an armed conflict. Now, um, the thing about having a declaration of war is that is a carryover from the founding generation for about 150, yeah, 150 years plus. After the term had, it's still kind of with us. You can still have a legal state of war, but you are dealing with an armed conflict. So what the Congress has switched over is to authorizing military force. Okay, now look what's happening. It's not the label that you put, the legal label that you put on a relationship between two countries. It's an observation of the fact of whether there's boots marching, warplanes in the air, and a lot of lead and explosive flying. That's when you have an armed conflict, and yeah, that's what we have. But to still, if we're going to be keeping up the spirit of the Constitution, and we are talking about committing the United States forces, the United States military forces, to fighting the other country.
Mhm.
So that's the constitutional implications. And because it is a gray area as far as the Constitution is concerned, um, the way that it's finessed is to have the United States Congress authorize use of military force or authorize presence where hostilities could be imminent.
Yeah, but again, he has an active AUMF. It may not have been funded in the last budget bill, but he has an active an AUMF that is still valid. And you can't ignore the fact that the goalposts have been moved. At least, I mean, I want to say colloquially. I know that's the wrong word, but the, in a modern sense, as of the year 2026, Vladimir Putin has moved those goalposts. So he still has not contended that they are at war with Ukraine. The word war's been used accidentally a couple of times. It's slipped out in the Russian media. But the fact of the matter is, as far as if you go and ask Vladimir Putin, he's not at war with Ukraine. This is still a special military operation. That's been years now. And Trump is had again a specific goal, specific goals, those being number one, eliminate the head of state, so cut the head off the snake. Number two, stability for the citizens who were finding themselves unable to protest. And three, make it to where they can no longer continue their nuclear activities of any sort. Now, that last
Oh,
piece,
and the missile programs. He wants to knock out the missile program too.
right? Which, and I suppose that's valid as well. But again, as I mentioned to you in our text messages, they don't have a delivery system right now that can even deliver their nukes if they finally produce them. So that's just for our listeners a little recall there. But if he's got just like specific goals and thinks this is only going to last a week and has the AUMF, there's absolutely no arguing that Iran is the world's biggest state sponsor of terror. They have been doing this for I don't know how long, decades. I mean, if we go, let's see, We've got the USS Cole. We've got what other? Well, I mean, funding Hezbollah, funding everybody.
Hamas
Up
and yeah, a
Hamas.
few others, the Houthis. I think the Houthis in Yemen. But yeah,
Yeah, there's absolutely no arguing. Look, this guy was a terrorist. If I'm gonna go to Africa, where I know that there is a cell of ISIS operating, and my goal is to eliminate that specific head of that cell, and while I'm there, eliminate any possibility of that cell continuing to operate, and then get the hell out of there. Nobody's gonna nobody's gonna say a peep. Everybody's gonna say, yeah, that's clearly you're taking out a terrorist because he was a again pseudo head of state. People are looking at it differently, but should they be? I mean, isn't this just a special military operation? You're saying if there's any kinetic involvement between two states, that is a war, but
armed conflict.
armed conflict. But Trump can claim anything he wants, and that's what I mean when I say the goalposts have been moved. These guys don't get any pushback from the public when they just decide I'm going to use different language, and that changes it and makes it legal. Is Trump in any kind of exposure here from making this move?
I think that he is. Well, the thing about the AUMF is that it was meant to go after um, people like the Taliban and then later ISIS, and now it's being used to go after a state. I mean, the resolution itself was what was oriented towards armed groups rather than um, states. And the Taliban did control Afghanistan by the time we got in our legs, but we never actually recognized them as a legitimate government.
But we are now.
And yeah. Now, but the thing with Iran is that is you could have a colorable case when you're talking about the missiles, about actually sending conventional weapons to terrorist groups, giving them funding and things like that. There you have a plausible case. But when he changed it, one of the war aims to being a regime change and then stabilizing the Iranian political situation. I mean, that's the stuff of a ground war, which actually he has not committed troops that anyone has heard of. He hasn't committed ground troops. Um, but it's stretching the meaning of that AMUF authorization for use of military force um, more than it was originally meant.
Yeah, but when we were going into Iraq and Afghanistan, what wound up happening was we were looking at an insurgency situation. So, but Iran is going to be different. What I see winding up happening is this is kind of a backwards thing, whereas Afghanistan and Iraq stayed pretty well contained within their borders, whatever conflict we had with them during those wars. Iran is going to be kind of the opposite. It's just immediately exporting the violence to everybody in the region. And we know that they have lots of friends, they have lots of paramilitary groups that they've funded in the past, wouldn't exist without their support. I'm sure that in the background, or at least I hope, that we in the background are going after their finances while we're doing all this kinetic bullshit. But I contend that this is going to wind up being a years long quagmire throughout the Middle East, and that it is not going to turn into World War III. It's going to stay contained to that area, but it's going to get exported from Iran, and we've got a long way to go on this. Not weeks, but years. How do you feel about all that?
Uh, the, the one sign of hope that I see, at least in terms for our immediate involvement, is that when we haven't committed ground troops, then pretty much we can declare our goals accomplished and quit bombing, and that can happen anytime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had an absolutely minimal ground operation in Venezuela, and when that was over with, then the armed conflict with the Venezuelan government was over. We still have what Trump has identified as a non-international armed conflict with the cartels. Okay, that's not really something our Constitution says you can declare. It is a class of war that the law of war recognizes, but okay. Um, in terms of Iran doing what they've done for decades, sponsoring terrorist groups abroad or outside Iranian borders, yes, that can happen. They've still got some ordnance that they can fire, uh, and they're probably going to run out. I gather that we know where all of the Shahad missiles are being manufactured. And
Shahed and
Shahed, yeah,
their drones, just for our listeners to be
yeah,
clear on that.
and the stockpiles can be destroyed. In fact, the United Kingdom, they've said that they're not going to actually participate in shooting anything, but we can use their bases to launch attacks against the drones and the drone manufacturing, which I thought was interesting. And there's other noise from other NATO countries also giving like limited participation. And here we are trying to sideline NATO, or Trump is trying to sideline NATO, and now all of a sudden they prove themselves useful. I like them apples.
Well, do you see us getting any help? I mean, do you see NATO or for that matter, just any European countries or anybody getting involved in this? Just
I think if Iran escalates against foreign shipping, especially, there might be some retaliatory strikes that would be coordinated with us. Um, but I don't think we can count on, if we actually do decide to have a ground operation, it's going to be us and the Israelis. Maybe one of the Persian Gulf powers, but I wouldn't swear to it.
and you don't think you just said you don't think that they're going to get involved. I mean, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and the UAE? I mean, all of these countries have been building up very significant not only arms stockpiles but training that we and others have been offering them over the last 10 years or so. I mean, this conflict was not unforeseen.
Mm,
Everybody knew that this is a conflict that if it hasn't happened today, could happen tomorrow, etc.
right, right.
I mean, everybody's been training for it. Why do you not mention them, or why do you specifically say we might see one Gulf state get involved, but not the others? Why? I mean,
I,
they're
I would know that it would be one Gulf state. Saudi Arabia obviously is the biggest, and they're Iran's biggest rival in the area. The smaller ones, Oman, Bahrain, the Emirates, um, they might contribute some forces, the way that the Baltic republics did when we invaded Afghanistan. Um, they don't. Most of them don't have a standing army that they could actually send over the border to invade, or nor do I see that they'd be particularly willing to. I mean, the Saudis haven't been willing to uh, commit as much forces before, and I think that they do want to keep the relationship with Iran managed. And I think if they're savvy enough to understand that they can't pursue regime change in Iran the way that maybe Donald Trump would wish that they would.
Yeah, but we essentially already did that. I mean, the president was not confirmed dead, so I can't pronounce his name. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen, but he has not been pronounced dead. He's been pronounced injured, according to whatever reports have come out so far. I mean, is it a leaderless country already? Is this did you have enough time over the last 2 days to figure out for yourself whether this council, as they're calling it, is going to be able to exercise any kind of power over the military? Because at the end of the day, the IRGC is who we're concerned about doing any kind of retaliatory action, not to mention protecting the country itself. I believe that Trump left the door open for the IRGC to to be part of the transition. In fact, he said that today, if I'm not incorrect. He said, I
That's
think
right.
the IRGC should get together with a few other groups and they should be running the country. This is kind of the same thing that he did in Venezuela, which is like, okay, we're going to cut the head off the snake, but we're going to still leave the snake there wriggling around.
Right, and it grows back another head.
Yeah,
And usually
so,
the process, if you don't mind me stretching the metaphor, is that there are a lot of stubs that had to grow out of that grow up and they jockey for a while until eventually one of them wins. And that can happen with varying amounts of violence between potential final heads coming out at the top.
hmm
Um, so, but the Iranian regime is now in its third generation. I mean, there are people who have grown up and started having their own kids and raised their own kids with with the Iranian religious regime. And when you have something like that that's been controlling 90 million people for decades, you don't destroy it by killing 40 of the top people because they all have people who like to step into those positions, and the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps is a military organization, so of course they've got a very clear line of succession over who's going to be in charge.
but they're also a political organization and they're also a making organization.
They are. They know who's going to be in charge when the top guy isn't. So,
Right.
yeah. And the council, that's probably going to be a vehicle. It's going to be more sort of like a president's kitchen cabinet, where there are several different players of indeterminate roles, indeterminate strengths, but you've still got two or three who are closest, who actually manage to hold more sway than others. And this is just very simple group dynamics.
hmm
So there's going to be more powerful figures, and their own respective followings that will emerge out of this council. And the IRGC is, I don't know if they're actually a formal member yet, but I've got a feeling that they're going to be working very closely with whoever emerges. And for a while, there's going to be tension between those two power centers. There always is. And eventually, nothing will get done without the Revolutionary Guard approving it.
Well, you sound like you've already just accepted that we are the way these things normally go when we have the CIA working closely with the president on operations like this rather than the military being the spearhead. Usually the way this works is we already have a new leader lined up who's going to be nice to us. I mean, let's not forget that's how Iran wound up the way they are. I mean, if you go
Yeah,
back
yeah.
back far enough, it was us that essentially put the system in place that has been in place. And another thing I want to bring up that I did bring up in my last video is that these people, because you said generationally they've been growing up under this regime. That's true, but those parents did not forget the revolution. I mean, they did not forget the way they were living, and
Well,
even if you
please.
look, I know. Even if you look at like I watch TV shows or YouTube stuff where you get to see people actually living day to day in Iran and accepting the religious requirements, they are still living about the way that we do. I mean, modern cities, fast Wi-Fi, great food, freedom to go to work and go out and go to nightclubs and all of that stuff.
World-class
These
medical care, yeah.
Yeah, these folks have not forgotten what it was like not to have the Ayatollahs. So I believe that that spirit has continued through their and will be partially instilled in their children as much as it can be. And again, this is a populace that has no guns. They have no way to take over their own government. So are you resigned to the fact that this council and the IRGC are going to wind up in charge of Iran? And if so, are they going to loosen up on the religious stuff and allow people to live their lives? Or Are they going to be a continuation of what the Ayatollahs did?
They're the front runners in who are immediately filling the power vacuum, and there really isn't much of a power vacuum because, like I said, you kill the top leaders. There's still everyone underneath them who would be jockeying for power, and they're still all depending on the same institutions to channel their own exertion of authority over the rest of the country. And those institutions haven't been destroyed. There are religious institutions, and so there are stakeholders who still want to see those religious strictures in place. Uh, and depending on how powerful they are in relation to, I won't say secular, because we don't know just how secular they are, but toward the secular minded, depending on where the tension, the give and take, the jockeying comes out, there might be some loosening. At least enforcement might be lax, made more lax, but I don't think that they'll immediately make grand symbolic uh, changes, such as saying that women no longer have to cover their hair. I don't think we'll be seeing things like that, at least not immediately.
But they are very politically wily. I mean, the IRGC is not stupid. They
Right.
have very smart people at the head. Wouldn't they see, just from, I mean, a simple marketing standpoint, we have to loosen up on this religious because if we don't allow these people to have some more freedom, number one, we risk being attacked by the United States again, assuming we do get out of this early. And number two, the world in is that we have an opportunity here that we should bite on and get the goodwill. This is an opportunity for goodwill, and the IRGC has been offered the opportunity to run the country without being told what to do by the Ayatollah for the first time in over 30 years. So, wouldn't they take that opportunity, don't you think, to say, okay, everybody, let's loosen up and let's let the cameras see what we're doing. Let's, make sure that the world just kind of backs off on us for a little bit.
Uh, do they perceive that opportunity as actually existing?
Are you
I
asking
mean,
me?
yeah. I mean, it's one thing to know that there is this opposition to the religious police and whatnot. Uh, but does IGRC see that as a way to bolster of its own power, winning over people who would like the religious strictures relaxed? Do they think that that's a powerful enough political and social force that would help their own power? Um, and I wouldn't even hazard a guess about what they're thinking. I mean, maybe there are some people who have been following uh, the internal discussions in the
IRGC.
IRGC,
Yeah.
yeah, more closely than either of us has. Maybe even those deliberations are secret. Uh, I agree it's a possibility. I just don't know if the IRGC sees it as a possibility, and even if it's a real possibility that they might want to take advantage of as a way to marginalize one of the other power centers in the Iranian polity.
But what about the legit? So, from the IRGC's standpoint, assuming that they are going to try and be part of a coalition government, what if they're looking for legitimacy from Europe? They're looking for legitimacy from their Arab neighbors. They're looking for legitimacy with the United States. They're looking especially to get the Five Eyes to maybe lay off a little bit. If all of that is their goals, assuming they're as politically wily or um, astute as I insist they are, wouldn't they see? Or well, so anyway, the question is are they going to be seen as legitimate from an international standpoint? And the reason I'm asking is, look, I'm contending that what Trump did can be explained away as legal one way or another. The world, you obviously disagree, and the world may also disagree. So they say, okay, so the ruler was deposed illegally, the war was started illegally. and now a new head of state or a new council of state has been appointed without any legal framework or structure that anybody knows about. Is Iran going to have legitimacy on worldwide markets? Are they going to have legitimacy in the United Nations? I mean, are England and Australia and France and Spain and all of these other countries going to look at this and say, okay, what happened happened, and we'll deal with this council the same way that we would have dealt with anybody else? In fact, we might even start opening up towards Iran. Or are they going to say this whole thing was illegal and we don't know how to handle it?
Uh, the way I thought I might frame things first. There's two things that you can recognize. You can recognize a state, or you can recognize a government. The United States will do both. England only recognizes states. So Iran is a country. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, it doesn't matter who's in charge. Whoever they put forward as in charge is whom they're going to be taking an ambassador from. Uh, the American model, we don't recognize. We do recognize whether the governments are legitimate or not, and often we won't trade ambassadors with a government we don't consider to be legitimate. During the Cold War, and actually before, when the Soviet Union seized the Baltic republics, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, we did not recognize that takeover for the whole Cold War. And we never extended recognition to those three Baltic republics because we never uh, felt that they had ceased being states. Uh, and I have a sense that your question about the legitimacy of Iran, well, first of all, it's a state. There's really no argument there. In terms of whether the United States will see a government as legitimate, Trump has already, in effect, said that he's going to recognize whichever government rises to the top. And we still don't know whether this council has solidified authority, has solidified control over the Iranian government apparatus. That's going to be a factual determination, and I don't have a sense that as soon as it looks like there's a leader that will deny it, there's a particular leader. We probably don't want to see another religious figure in charge. I don't think that if one emerges that we would refuse to recognize it as a legitimate government, especially if it's backed by the rest of the tier immediately below those who were removed.
So clarify for our listeners. You just said what? Clarify for our listeners the difference between state and a state and a government when we're talking about recognition.
Uh, Let me back up a bit to the big view of what a state is.
Mhm.
You have to have a fixed geographical territory. The boundaries might be fuzzy, but there's got to be some of the territory no one disputes. You have to have a permanent population, so you wouldn't have nomadic tribes crossing borders. That wouldn't reach a population, but you've got a population that is settled. You have to have a government that can exert control over the territory and the population. And you have to have the government be able to carry out relations with other countries. In other words, trading ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have all four of those things, and the fourth actually derives from the first three, but you got at least the first three, and the fourth is along for the ride, then you have a country.
Okay.
And Great Britain and several other countries will only recognize entire countries and not particular governments. Now, the United States will recognize governments. We do recognize states, and then there are times when there is no government, and so we won't be having international relations with what is a de facto government.
So Somalia would be considered a state, but without a government. It's recognized as a state, but the government is not recognized. There is no government, or
Right,
unless.
it's a failed government. I mean, I'm not well versed in exactly how this is going, but if they've got
I'm not
someone they
either.
can send as a, if they've got someone they can send as an ambassador and a place for our ambassador to stay, then we've got international relations and we're recognizing a government.
Right. So then, taking everything you've said into consideration, my next question, I wrote it down just now. What have we accomplished for it? I mean, if we're going to allow this council, along with the IRGC and along with the leftovers from the previous government, to now take over, and if they are only going to continue the policies of the previous government, then what have we accomplished for the Iranian people at all?
That's a good question. Um, Arguably, there's an alternative. There's an opportunity for people to take to the streets and insist on freedom and justice and a new Iranian way. Uh, with communications down, it's going to be hard for them to organize something like that.
Hmm.
Um, we do have a figure who's been removed. Uh, there's political space for the new government to disassociate itself from that kind of abuses. So there wouldn't be 18,000 people killed for protesting because that was something Khamenei wanted. Um, there might be the new religious police might see that they misstepped and want to curry their own favor with the public. So they might release a few of the strictures for a while. Um, anyone who sees that they have a stake in consolidating their own power by disassociating themselves from Khomeini's abuse, it's an
Hmm.
opportunity for them to rise. And then once they rise on that agenda, they've got a promise to keep. And so maybe there actually could be a broad-based reform that is formulated and put into place and eventually implemented. So there is this big opportunity for the Iranian people. Um, I hesitate to say that that's what the actual situation is. It's just that this is what happens when you get a new leader. They consolidate power by saying we're not going to do those things and punishing those who have. Uh, and their actual record for not doing those things is mixed, but usually it lets up some.
But look at this 10 years that Tunisia went through, right? So
Mhm.
they, for all intents and purposes, stage a coup against their own government. They wind up with a democratic government. 10 years of it, they decide that the economy is failing, that social norms are being eroded by the democratic system. They essentially decide we want a strongman back. They welcome back a strongman. So first, they finally get a properly elected government. It fails to do what they wanted it to do. So they say, okay, we want a strongman back who's just going to say this has to change, and we'll be back to where we are happy. That didn't work out either. So now those poor folks are going on 12, 13 years where they did everything they could to get what they wanted, and it didn't work out because the promises, as you just said, were not being kept. I mean, did we just set Iran down the same exact path?
I don't think so because the, the vast bulk of the governmental apparatus is still intact.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's not going to be a terribly unstable situation. And with the institutions, they've still got the norms that they hold, but there's still space for an evolutionary change.
Hmm.
Evolutionary change.
Okay, but if there is change, is the IRGC any less violent than Khamenei? I mean, you just said the words, those 18,000, those poor 18,000 people. That was because that was what Khamenei wanted. Is the IRGC going to be any less violent? I mean, how do we know that it was? we know how he acted, and we know what he was willing to do to accomplish any goal. So
Uh-huh.
that's where we assume that the violence came from him as the head of the snake.
Yeah.
But the IRGC is the one who deals out the pain. They're the ones who carry out those orders. Aren't those sympathetic generals and admirals, etc., going to just continue the same policies? Or again, I don't think I got a full answer out of you last time. Or are they going to see the opportunity and take it to ease up? I mean, why would the Iranian people trust the IRGC any more than they trusted the Ayatollah?
Typically, in an autocratic system, if it's still got autocrats in lower ranks, they're not going to really change much. Um, that's going to be their first instinct, and depending on how much pressure they get from other groups and how ambitious actually people below the top rank, well, the second to the top rank, uh, are, say third tier people who start seeing that they could have as their own agenda some sort of reform going on.
Hmm.
Um, they're going to be exerting their own pressure to the extent that they can, and so it's still indeterminate. I wouldn't expect hardliners to stop being any less hardline until it looks like the best bet for holding power is to relax control a little bit. There's a distinction between control and power. And
Hmm.
right now, well, before uh, they were decapitated, their power and their authority, their power and their control were much more coextensive, and that that impetus is still going to be present, but it's going to fracture at least a little, and then we'll have to see who exploits those fractures.
And so, what is our role in all of this? So now, what's done is done.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
and it's going to continue for at least a couple of weeks, where we're dropping bombs, firing missiles, and Trump is gonna be his Trumpian self, and going from his ADD thing, where the focus changes. He takes advice from the last person he spoke to, blah blah blah. But what's done is done, and it was done by us. And Israel is not going to want to put boots on the ground either in that country. So, assuming that legality is something that's going to be hashed out down the road, and we are still going to continue to be militarily involved, what do you see being our role in the region right now after what's happened? I mean, it's done.
Oh, for the whole region, you mean?
I mean with Iran specifically, but extending to the region, because we were someone who was their biggest Iran's one of Iran's biggest enemies, along with Israel. But we were we were not involved in the country of Iran. Now we're involved in the country of Iran, so that fundamentally changes everything about how we deal with Iran's neighbors and deal with everybody in the entire Middle East. So again, to pose the question again with that background, what what do you think is our legitimate role going forward, assuming nothing's going to be undone? Where should we be? What should we be doing? Should we have boots on the ground? Should we be exerting more power? Should we be backing off? What should we do?
I think we should be exerting soft power, and soft power, it's a political science term, is the power to convince other people to want what you want. And we do have to have a whole network, a whole web of friendly relationships among all the countries in the region. Obviously, that's not going to happen with Iran. Um, I think even the opposition doesn't want to have much to do with this because uh, of our past association with the Shah, and here we are destroying the top of their government again. So, and speaking as someone who has tried to contemplate how bad governments become good governments, how revolutions can succeed in a positive way instead of just merely effectively. The thing is, it's going to have to be the Iranian people um, doing building their own version of democracy. And in terms of U.S. funding opposition groups, we shouldn't do that because that's going to be the kiss of death right there.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, Militarily, we're still going to need to defend our friends in the region and defend our own bases in the region. So Iran starts throwing its weight around, lobbs a few more shahads and other missiles. Um, for the sake of maintaining the order, that's not a thing that you do, the international order, that you don't attack your neighbors. We're going to have to be taking reprisals ourselves, and it's going to be, you're right, it's going to be a cycle going on for years. Um, the question is whether it's going to be an attempt to conquer territory or something like that, or install a puppet regime. I don't think those are exactly what even the aims of the Trump administration are, and it'd be a mistake to have another land war in Asia.
Right. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to pose to you the question that I kept getting asked this week. And for our listeners, I know that we've been jumping topic to topic really quickly here, is because we're on a strict 1 hour schedule here. But with the 5 minutes we have left, I got asked several times this week and continue to be asked, or the last couple days, is this World War III? And I immediately come back and scoff and say no, because World War III will never start in the Middle East. There might be a significant war. There might be a lot of states that choose to get involved in one way or another. But my personal contention is World War III is going to start on our soil, on Russia's soil, on China's soil, or on soil that is supposed to be China's. It's not going to start in the Middle East, and I think that's because the populations of the countries that would be involved in a world war, of the type people think in their head when they think world war, they just they're not willing to spend the blood and treasure on a war that is based on something centering around a Middle Eastern state. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think if it's World War III, it has to involve superpowers or near superpowers against one another. It's not going to be like World War I or World War II, where it starts with some guy nobody's ever heard of getting assassinated. It's
I
gonna,
would
you know.
I would sharpen that a bit. Um,
Mhm.
you're right. We wouldn't have full all-out war with either Russia or China. That was what generally a world war would be, because they're on the other side of the world and they'd be striking targets here. Uh, and that's usually the two world wars we had, it did involve great powers going after each other, and the three great powers are us, Russia, and China, and Europe, who's aligned with us. Uh, but uh, Russia and Iran have a robust military relationship, and China has been contributing. They have some trade in weapons in the area also. So
Yeah,
there's
but
going to
I have
be
to
an
I have
attack
to
on their interests in the region, but not their interests on the home territory necessarily.
Yes, but I have to interrupt you there. I mean, look, Russia is closely aligned with Syria. Okay, the second that Ahmadinejad was out of there, their support dropped, like a brick. I mean, they are superficially, in a foreign relations area of your head or whatever. They're only superficially propping these people up. They're not at the end of the day, when it could involve fighting the United States. I just don't see Russia saying, you know what, we've got to protect Iran under all. I mean, come on, they're not even
It's
there
not
right
that
now.
kind of security relationship. Right before we went on air, I did read one report where, uh, well, you know that Iran and Russia have a mutual defense pact, correct?
The Iran and Russia, yes.
Yeah. Uh, The one report I read, I've not checked it. It says that Putin refuses to make good on that deal to come to Iran's aid because what the United States is attacking is the terrorist interests, the apparatus for engaging in terrorism, which wasn't part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But um, what we're going after are those assets that are in Iranian territory. So there we are, kind of like what you predicted. It was Russia not coming to the aid of Iran. They found
Okay,
a
so
legalistic way to do it, and kind of an amusing way. But yeah, I mean, they're not in the tank with Iran in this conflict.
to be clear for our listeners in the last minute here, you are agreeing with me that no, people can calm down. This is not World War III.
It is not World War III.
Okay.
It's
Well,
still too serious, and it should still never have happened, and it's still a big mistake, probably a foreign policy blunder. Not as severe as invading Iraq the second time, but yeah.
right. Well, um, I think we got somewhere. I think our listeners got something out of this. I know everybody, we hop subject to subject, and there's lots more we could have talked about. We could have talked about the fact that Hegseth is missing, and that this seems like me to be adventurism by Rubio. We could have talked about. Well, there's a lot we could have talked about, but we got to some good stuff. I'm glad that we hopped subject to subject because we covered a broad range. And listeners, viewers, I hope it was useful to you. We want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank Ewen Allison again so very much for giving his time late at night. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
And look forward to seeing Ewan again, of course. He is going to always be welcome on the pod. And get excited, guys, because we do have live recordings coming up. We've got sponsorships coming up. We got some exciting guests coming up. We got all kinds of stuff coming up. So remember to hit that subscribe button. Remember to hit the like button. Remember to comment. Remember to share. If you are in the main area, make sure that you watch for Ewan's face on the street so you can walk up to him, shake his hand, and tell him thank you so much for educating us. And come and see us again. So, Ewan, thank you again for being here. We will talk to you soon. And any last words?
I look forward to our next show.
Rock on. All right, everybody, this has been Reason Rises with me, Doug V, and thank you for being here. We will see you soon.
See you soon.